here we go. Why I can't remember that. Jim knows why, though, don't you? You know why I can't remember that. Yeah, that's right. That's what I'm getting at. Yeah. Okay. So, as I said, we're going to be focusing this morning on the New Testament, the fact that Jesus taught, the need for authority, and the fact that the apostles then picked it up, and they pushed the need for authority as well. I mean, really, let's just be candid here. Is it really surprising that there is a thing called authority? I mean, we have a creator. We have a God who created us in his image. Is it unreasonable to assume that he would give us things to do, and want us to do them the exact way he tells us to do it? Is that unreasonable to anybody? Please stand up and let me know if it's not. Because to me, it doesn't. And it almost seems for this group that authority is redundant, other than the standpoint that we are called upon to teach. And so it's a good thing for us to have this stuff. Put it wherever you want. I find blank pages in my Bible and put this stuff in because I can't remember it. If I got it right there, I can quickly. And the lessons are divided up really good so you can do that. And I urge you to do that. So, before we start, though, let's remember a verse that's out there. And we talked a little bit about it. For the time has come that judgment must first begin at the house of God. And if it first begin with us, what shall the end be of them that obey not the gospel of God? And if the righteous scarcely be saved, where shall the ungodly and the sinner appear? It's not there to make us feel sad, because we can clearly get on the road. Apostle Paul tells us we can know our salvation is imminent. He knew where he was going, and he said you can know the same thing, and we knew that. We know that. We know that's absolutely true. And so that's why we agonize over authority. That's why we study it. That's why we make absolutely sure we're doing exactly what the Bible tells us to do. The things that we're going to learn in this class, we're at number 1 right now, the need for authority. Relevant, the fact that we have to be focused on it, the fact that we have to teach about it is important. The other thing that comes along with teaching authority is there's a peace in the congregation that comes from that. When you understand how the elders think, and you understand authority, you understand that they're doing that, you weigh your ideas that you bring up before you bring them up, because you know what things the elders are going to consider, and you don't get your feelings hurt when those things get kicked out. Because as elders, we are worried about first steps. May not necessarily be a thing that's wrong, but it's a step in the wrong direction. It's a direction that we don't want to go. And so sometimes ideas get rejected just for that reason, because it's a step where we don't want to go. And that, by knowing that, you can understand and appreciate the 4 guys that you got that are making those decisions. So the need for authority. The fact that there are 2 sources of authority, human and divine. The fact that authority, the commands that are given, the actual things that we read that tell us what to do, okay, we understand that those can be generic. They can be specific. We'll study that. These are all lessons that we'll learn as we go through here. We'll learn how to establish authority. The concept of direct command, apostolic examples, necessary inference. Those things will be talked about. And we'll understand how we draw that out of the text and understand what God wants us to do. We're going to talk over and over about the silence of the Scriptures. It does not authorize anything, and I know you all know that. We don't have that problem here, but there are other folks that believe that silence of the Scriptures gives you authority to go, and we've talked about that. If you accept that, There's no end to how far you go. It just keeps right on going and going until you drop off the edges of the earth. How to apply the lessons learned to the organization and the work of the church. Within that, we'll be studying about things that the individual can do and things that the church, the collective, can do. Those things will be brought up. And so these things, we don't have to necessarily, in our lives constantly be thinking about them, but we need to know what they are. If somebody says, hey, when you read the Bible, how do you establish what you're to do? And you can quickly say, direct command, necessary inference, apostolic examples. And they say, well, give us examples. And you're able to do that from a teaching standpoint. You do that now just because that's how you were raised, or it's how you've studied, or wherever you're at. You do that already, but we need to be able to teach people from without, because these things are lacking everywhere around us. We talked a little bit about epochs, different Greek epochs, and it seems like whenever you get somebody, you teach them the word, and you get them here where they can't hardly deny it, then they jump over to the Greek and try to confuse the issue, okay? But whenever we do that, we have to make sure that we're in the first century, because the Greek language has changed a lot, and we need to be sure. So we're talking about the Koine Greek in the first century. It meant rightful authority, delegated power, officer position, domain of authority. This is Vine. This is the meaning that Vine uses. Thayer is also a part of that definition. Our need for it, as seen in the New Testament, rings from two different places. The power of authority, the right to exercise it, and the power or rule of government, the power of one who will command, must be obeyed by others. Those are the way it was particularly used at the time that Scripture was written. And that's important because we want to know what we find in the Greek. Only options, divine and human. We studied last week a little bit about some examples of clearly folks that didn't do things by authority and how God felt about it. Those four examples there. And of course with David, we're talking about moving the ark on the cart. So let's start with Jesus. Jesus recognized and taught the need for authority. Now, we drove that home last week with this verse. This verse, to me, is kind of the signature verse that we see all through the book on authority. And why does this book, this particular verse, seem to be so good? Why do you like this verse? And let me read it. And when he was come into the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came unto him as he was teaching, and said, by what authority doest thou these things? And who gave thee this authority? And Jesus answered and said unto them, I also will ask you one thing, which if you tell me, I will tell you likewise. So what were the chief priests and the elders saying? Go ahead, Jim. Yeah. Who are you, basically, is what they're saying. Who are you? Who gives you the right to speak these things? And we saw another verse last week about Jesus when he spoke to at the synagogue. They wondered because he spoke to them as not as a scribe, not as a Pharisee, not as somebody that was just regurgitating something that they had learned, but somebody that had authority, right? So, yeah, right. No. So under the law of Moses, go all the way back to the law of Moses, authority was a thing there. Why would it change when it comes into the New Testament? And it didn't. Here's Jesus teaching. The baptism of John, which was it? From heaven or from men? Two levels of authority, man or divine. And they reasoned within themselves, saying, if we say this or that, and they couldn't answer. But what Jesus was saying the same thing. Yeah, I'm with you on this authority thing. Which one was it? And they couldn't answer. But the fact, yeah. Yeah. Right. That's what I'm saying. I mean, I don't really even see why we, I mean, well, I do. What am I getting ready to say? Something dumb. But we absolutely, it's reasonable that the God of heaven, the Creator, would want us to act the way He tells us to act and do the things that we're on the earth to do. And when we do those things and reject all other, who's glorified? Not us, the Father, which probably hits the whole crutch of what he's talking about. The fact that that's why we're here, is to glorify God on the earth. And yeah.
So, I've been debating whether or not to bring this up.
Yeah, go ahead, man. It's a safe place.
It is a safe place. I want to make it known I'm not challenging your book necessarily.
No.
I'm challenging one
It's all right.
point, though. And he keeps bringing it up, so that's why I'm making
Yeah, right.
bring it up, but he keeps bringing it up. So I'm going to say, he has this idea that there are only two kinds of authority. Divine God and man. That's
Right.
actually not true. There's a third party. There's always been a third party. Behind the scenes doing this, okay? And that's Satan. And his helpful. Paul in Ephesians chapter 6 and verse 12, we all know he uses this language. Principalities, powers, authorities, rulers, dominions. He uses this language in Ephesians and Colossians to describe these beings. And that's not an arbitrary language. Paul used that for a specific reason. And it's that these beings have real authority, like the devil. So since we're talking about New Testament examples of
Yeah.
authority, I thought I would bring this up because it's a New Testament example of authority. When the devil is tempting Jesus in Luke 4, verse 5, it said, so the devil taking him up on a high mountain showed him all the kingdoms of the world in all this time. And the devil said to him, all this authority I will give to you and their glory. This has been delivered to me, and I give it in my way. Now, everybody's heard me talk about this before, but the classic answer to that is that the devil didn't have the authority to give me restrictions. But if that's so obvious to us, then it would be obvious to Jesus, and it seems like Jesus would correct him, but he doesn't. The reason why Jesus doesn't correct him is the devil actually does have that authority to give him. And what does that mean? It simply means this. And I reserve the right to change my mind on this.
It's deep. Yeah. Making me sweat.
He has the right. He has the authority. Like we take his influence in the world for granted sometimes. Like he is influencing people. He tries to influence us, but we take that for granted. And that God could choose to not allow him to do that. Like when he did everything that he did to Job, he had to get permission to do it. And what that tells me is that he has to have authority, permission to do anything that he does. He has to have the okay from God to do it. It doesn't mean God condones it, but God allows certain things to happen. So he has the right to influence men. And so we're talking about authority. And sometimes men look to their own authority to do certain things, to follow their own will, instead of God's will. Well, I think it's really important to understand, why does this matter when I bring it up? It matters because man is not, when he errs and he follows his own authority, he tries to do what he wants to do, like Cain, like Nadab and Abihu. There's an agency acting on them that's not their own. There's something outside that's tempting them and influencing them, something that has the right to do that has the ability to do that God could just shut that down if he so chooses in his wisdom to do, but he dead, and he allows that to happen. And so, I think that's a piece of this puzzle as we talk about authority. We're like, why do people follow? Why do people do what they do? It's not just because they're sinners. They're sinners and they follow their own will and they're corrupt, and that's true. But there's outside authority and agency that influences them, and I think that's really important. I'm sorry I took it away.
No. It's an interesting thing.
But I think that's important in our conversations. We need to understand there's always this third party out there that's acting on men's sin.
Yeah.
And it's not that men don't have free will and can't choose. They do have something on the outside working on them that has the authority to be able to do that.
Yeah, well, that came up in my AI search. I went out, I forgot to bring that up at the beginning of the thing. I went out and put in AI, and I said, how often is the word eusia? That's our word by word. I butchered it, but, and I don't know why it wasn't up there. It didn't make my cut. But it mentioned that there's 102 times that word is used in the New Testament. But it's used in the ways that we said to mean, the two items that we just had up on the board there. It doesn't violate that, but it says that it mentioned the devil's authority, it mentioned angelic authority, it mentioned human authority, divine, and there was one other one. I can't remember what it was offhand. Anyways, but here's the way I see it though. To keep it simple, what I'm thinking is, okay, man chooses between one of two authorities. Okay, they choose between to go with the authority of Satan, or whether to go with the thing. And I think he recognizes that. He's just saying, I think he's bringing it down, because man's choosing. He's
in their mind, they're choosing between God or doing their own thing.
Right, and when they do their own thing, that's Satan. So you could change it to two types of authorities, Satan, or and then kind of include that in there. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, and then in the AI, it had angelic. That falls under the same category. Angels, God. I'm not sure. I haven't thought the angel thing out. Yeah, I better be quiet about that until I look at that. But a little more. Yeah. So it is interesting to put that in there though, because it gives you all the 102 times. It tells you where it's found. In the New Testament. I think it was 41 in the Gospels. One of the one that had it the most per capita was 1 Corinthians. So I thought that was interesting too. So yeah, yes or no.
Which is godly or angelic or one of those holy lines, or we can choose man's authority on the decision-making tree, which is Satan's angels, our own will, which would fall under sin, and ultimately we still have the one authority, which to me in my mind always represents God.
Yeah. Yes, what you're saying, don't be confused when you clearly see that the devil has authority. That's right.
What he said though.
Yeah.
There really is only one authority. All authority comes down to three.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that is a good way of thinking about it. Okay, so this definitely needs to be in your Bible. Underline it, highlight it, put it in the back so you can find it, because if you're talking to somebody about authority, there's no better verse. It clearly shows that authority was a thing, back in the first century. So when we talk about Christ, Christ indicating that and taught authority, the Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity, lawlessness, and shall cast them into a furnace fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Then shall the righteous shine forth as the sun in the kingdom of the Father. Who hath ears to hear, let him hear. What's he teaching there? Pretty clear. He's not leaving any thought for what's going to happen to you if you decide to deviate from God's authority. And some folks are like, well, how far can I go? What can I do? We should not have that attitude. We should constantly be striving towards the right, constantly striving to see am I doing everything that the Lord tells us to do? I don't think we need to lose sleep over it, but I think it needs to be a constant thing when we study. Compare our lives, compare our church, compare our eldership, compare decisions that are being made. Are we doing what the Lord wants us to do, that He's given us the authority to do, to act on? Comments on that verse, because that verse is pretty intense. He's going to send forth His angels, and they shall be gathered out of His kingdom. This reminded me when I was reading it of the parable of the tares, right? And what was the kingdom in the parable of the tares? Do you remember? You remember what it was? No, it was the field. It was the field. So we have to be careful when we read this stuff, because sometimes the kingdom is like universal. The Lord created the earth. It's His, So I don't necessarily say, because we studied the first verse, right? That if judgment begins with us, what about those without? And it's a sad deal. And then we said, therefore, the fields are white. They're white. There's people all around us lost. People that are professing the name of Christ, but they're not concerned about authority. They're listening to their pastor who says, this is what you need to do, and it's incorrect. So I don't want to face the Lord at the end of judgment. I just don't want to face Him. I want to be sure that when I go before Him, I have read the Scriptures, I understand the Scriptures, I have lived them out, and I know exactly what He wants me to do. And that's what Paul did. And Paul could say from doing that, he knew. And that's why we wrangle about this stuff, is because it's important, because others don't. They don't wrangle about it. They just open it up. Well, we got all these people, and we got all this money, and we got all this time. It makes sense from a human standpoint, doesn't it? To just go do something. Well, wait a minute. Let's make the church responsible for feeding the poor. And we'll send them all out. And they'll never even think about the name of Christ. They'll be in the kitchen cooking. They're godly people. If you ask them, do you believe in Jesus Christ? Yes, but are they doing the work that they're supposed to be doing? Yeah, feeding the poor is important, sure. But is that it? Never think another thing about it? Because that's what we like to do. I like to cook, You see where I'm going with that? We cannot do that. We have to know what God would have us do. A thing can be right within itself and still be wrong. Okay. A Christian who refuses to recognize the authority of the Father and His Son can look forward to the following. But a fearful and unbelieving would fall under a Christian, right? I'm afraid to get to talk to the elders. I'm afraid as an elder to change what we're doing, even though I know it's wrong, because I'm fearful. Or I'm unbelieving, thinking that silence of the Scriptures authorizes. Abominable, murderers, whoremongers, sorcerers, idolaters, liars. Those are some pretty seriously sinful people. Back to the fearful and unbelieving, though, not necessarily so. Shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death. Revelation 21. Interesting that the Bible ends with those verses, those stern warnings. Comments? Because I submit to you that when we do things that we don't have authority for, we're fearful, we're unbelieving, or we're just plain innovators. We're leaders on the cusp. Fearful, unbelieving. Mossy. Right. Oh, absolutely. There's going to be members of the Church of Christ that are going to go to hell. There's no doubt about that. When you think about all the things we do under the name of Church of Christ, think of it. I mean, you've been places too. You've seen it just like I've seen it. It's amazing what, quote, brethren will come up with and thinking that it's what God wants. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's why we got to be ready. That's why we got to study these things so we can go take them to task and explain to them. Why, Elizabeth?
That very last part, all liars. Like, we consider people who don't tell the truth to others to be liars, but how often do we consider how much we lie to ourselves? How much we just say, oh, these things, we lie to ourselves in order to make ourselves comfortable in our own mind. And those lies are the most dangerous. And it's what our brethren in mankind, all across the world, it's the lies that they tell themselves that they're following God and not following Satan, but their authority isn't there.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that lie that's going to take them.
Yeah. Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, once you start down the wrong road, once you allow silence of the scriptures, to move it on, you're done from the first time on, because then the congregates, the people, will say, well, wait a minute, Dwayne, you approved this, as an elder, and the scriptures don't say anything about that activity. So we constantly build, and we just keep rolling from the point at which we said, we don't have to have authority for everything we do. And it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. We've seen it here in Jackson, just since I've been here. I've only been here 27 years. And some of the churches here, where they've gone just in 27 years is amazing. So you have to constantly be pushing to the right, making sure that you're doing exactly, you find authority for everything you do. And if we can't find authority for it, or it looks like first steps, guess what? We don't do it. We don't do it because we see the result of what happens. And you can even drive further. Go to Nashville. See what's going on there in some of the churches of Christ. Yeah.
That was the one point that when I was a young man trying to figure all this out, and where I was going to stand on all this, what you just said, that was the one point
Yeah.
that did it for me, that once you let the gate open, you crack it just a little bit, then there's no end to it.
No. Then you run into the top there, the fear and the unbelieving. You now, when you make changes to your church, it can't be big ones, because the fear is everybody will walk. As soon as you remove that, that's it. They can't do it, Mossy. Yeah. No. It's a profound respect for God to do this. Yeah. Right. Yeah, you're showing your respect. You're showing that you love the Father and you see His wisdom in all things and what He's told you you're going to do. You're not going to go any further. Even though you got the money, the time, the people, you got all these wonderful things you could be doing, put them all on spreading the gospel. That's what we're supposed to be doing. Edify them, spread the gospel, help those needy saints. The result of apostasy is what Paul calls it a mystery, the mystery of iniquity. And we know mystery means revealing. What do you think he means there? Let's read this verse. For the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. What do you see there? The mystery of iniquity. What is he saying in context?
Isn't that where the guy sets himself up and proclaims himself to God?
Absolutely. The son of perdition. Mm-hmm. Who some would say is the Antichrist. Yeah, which is not the case at all. Basically telling what were the Thessalonians worried about? What was their big thing? Do you remember 2 Thessalonians? that tackles the thing. What was their concern? Very valid concern. They had the wrong idea about how quickly the resurrection was going to come, if you remember. They'll give you a hint. But what were they worried about? Yeah, and as a result of that, remember, what were they concerned about? Loved ones, people, associates. They were concerned that they had missed the resurrection because they didn't understand the whole. They're new Christians. They knew the resurrection. They were excited about the resurrection, but they didn't understand. And so Paul went in and he explains that to them, okay? But in the course of this, he's giving them other things that they need to know that might cause their faith to go down. And that was the iniquity that would be building around them. The people that would take the gospel of Jesus Christ that Paul was preaching and make changes to it, and make it so many changes to it that it would no longer resemble what Jesus taught. Who were the ones trying to do that way out front? They were the leaders coming in behind Paul. What do we call them? Remember? Judaizing teachers. They were coming right behind Paul. I mean, year one, when he's teaching the Thessalonians, telling them, oh no, you need to include Judaism in this whole process. And who knows what other things were being taught as far as the gods and what other, worship, emperor worship, familial worship, all this stuff was rampant at this time. Coming right in behind Paul, teaching. And Paul's saying the mystery of iniquity, the revealing of iniquity doth already work. And when is he going to be taken out of the way? When will this iniquity, this mystery of iniquity be taken out of the way? The son of perdition, when will he be dealt with? When will the spirit of the Antichrist be dealt with? It says it's a spirit, not a person. John chapter 2. At the end of time. Judgment. It's going to be at the judgment. So do we get, as God's people, what are we supposed to do when we see all this iniquity around us, all this lawlessness, absolute, denominations that don't even match what we read in the New Testament? In fact, they don't even go to the New Testament. When they teach their catechism, they teach out of their own books that they've written. They hire people based on their own book. You can't sign up to teach in such and such denomination unless you sign a document. You are all in on this particular catechism or doctrine. I saw it the other day in the paper. There was a church, I didn't recognize where it was located, denomination, was looking for a pastor. And they said, don't even apply unless you subscribe to they named the thing, and then in parentheses, the Southern da-da-da-da, And I thought, there it is, right there, okay, guaranteeing that this legacy of teaching error is going to continue. We have to write something other than this, okay. So the other thing that can happen to us is within the church. Commentaries. We got to be real careful, about commentaries. Reading those, we read lots of them. I have favorite ones, but I do check other ideas, and I think that's important. So the mystery of iniquity is already out and around you, he's telling the Thessalonians. Don't lose heart, because it's there. Next one. Now the Spirit speaketh expressly that in the latter times. What's the latter times? We're in the latter times. That's exactly right. When did we enter the latter times? Yeah. When the new covenant was ushered in when Jesus was on the cross. Well, that's the latter times. Is there an age after the latter times? Absolutely not. It says latter times. So now the Spirit speaking expressly that in the latter times some shall depart from the faith. So don't lose your faith just because you're trying to do this and somebody calls you a hypocrite. Take that as a badge of honor. Put that dude right here, You're trying to teach what the Lord, that's not being a hypocrite or being a Pharisee. Giving heed to seducing spirits, and there it is, Jonathan, doctrines of devils. Comments? All right, so Jesus tells us a parable. Therefore, whosoever heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them, I will liken him unto a wise man which built the house upon a rock. And the rain descended, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat upon that house, and it fell not, for it was founded upon the rock. These things given to us by God, they are like, I like to liken it to a user's manual. If you follow, isn't the best way when you buy something is to read the user's manual and do stuff the way it says? I just recently bought one of those four things for my faucet outside. And I have one of those antifreeze deals, because both of my faucets had froze. So I went ahead and replaced them all with these antifreeze deal. Had I read the manual, okay, I put the faucet on there. I'm so excited because I'm raising tomatoes and different stuff, So I have all these hoses running different directions. Well, I got tired of disconnecting the hose because I only had 2. So I put 4 on. So you probably already know what I'm saying. So I put that 4 on there. I didn't even hook a hose up yet, but I opened them up. No, I didn't. No, that's right. That's where I was wrong. I didn't open any of them up, and I turned the thing on, and guess what happened to my protective freeze device? Whatever's in there from the pressure, the high pressure we got, ruined it. Right there on the first item in the user's manual, it said you may need to have I looked it up, it's some kind of a regulator to make sure that the pressure doesn't get above. So it ruined that. So now I got to go in, pull that whole thing out and do it because I didn't follow the user's manual. Same thing here. God gives us the best way to live our lives, what he wants us to do. Why would we not follow the user manual? Now I got to go buy another thing. And 26, and every one that heareth these sayings of mine and doeth them not, he shall be like unto a foolish man which builds his house upon the sand. And the rain descended, the floods came, the winds blew, and beat upon that house, and it fell, and great was the fall. Isn't that true? Doesn't mean that we're not going to have trouble. We do. We're called to endure. But still, we know that at the end, no matter what happens to us, we have a home in heaven with God, which is going to be wonderful. Comments on this verse, on this parable? So the wise man, he does what the Father recognizes him to command, what to do, what he commands him. That's the wise man that does it. And the foolish man who hears but does not obey. And he had a good verse for that. This is Jesus. Why call ye me Lord, Lord, and do not the things which I say? Doesn't make sense. So, the apostles also taught the need for authority. So Jesus goes to be with the Father, leaves his apostles on the earth to teach and to carry on furthering the kingdom. They're doing the same thing. They're teaching men all around them, follow the authority of the Father. So the apostles taught the need to it. Unity, the author brings up the fact that unity is very critical in the Lord's church. To have unity, we must all follow the same rule. And he gives the units of weights and measures. Here in the United States, for the most part, we still use the English version. But we do get confused when we start talking about metric, So it's kind of a good point to remember, if we follow the same rule, English weights and measures, we don't get confused when we start talking kilograms and millimeters and, all that. So there's no surprise if within the church we start teaching different doctrines, okay? We stop looking at the authority of Christ and striving for that, and then we go to what we think is a good thing for the church to do. We got people, we got money, we got manpower. Let's do something different. Yeah. Well, and that happens. They take it off the door, Yeah. Now, I haven't met any brethren yet. I'd be curious to know if any of you guys have. I thought about this the other day. There's a lot of scriptural names for the church. We really are, when we're asked, we really should say we're the first century church. Someone says, well, where do you go to church? Well, I'm a first century Christian, and try to explain that and then say that the name on the door is the Church of Christ. But, sorry, forgot where I was going with that. Oh, yeah, the way, the church of God, the house of the Lord. I've not met any brethren that go to a church. Of all the people I've studied with over my work life and different things, I've not met anybody that I would consider a brother that didn't go to a church that was called the Church of Christ. Have you? Anybody? Anybody go to a church of God and find folks? Of course, yeah, we don't typically on vacation frequent different name places, but in the workplace, I worked with a lot of people and talked with them over the years. And I've not, if a person was a brother, he went to the Church of Christ. So, that's, I was just thinking about it. I thought maybe some of you had.
There's some congregations that have taken the Church of Christ name down in particular, not because they're ashamed of it, but because they're trying to be less denominational. And I know it's,
Do you?
yeah.
I haven't run into that yet.
Like, yeah.
I've run into the little C,
There's
but
a
not.
preacher that you know, he goes to Livingston, it used to be called Livingston Church of Christ. Oh, you know the guy, if I knew his name, I'd tell you, he's the preacher, you know him. But like, it is a problem, like the other side of that is that people are treating the Church of Christ
Yeah.
as a denominational name. When they get into the institutional, we're gonna get to talk about institutional.
Oh, yeah.
That Church of Christ, some people hold on, go the opposite direction, hold on to that as a denominational thing. And we've got our stuff, like the Baptists and the Methodists have their stuff, and there's that denominational pride there. And I'm sure we'll talk about that later, but that's.
Oh, it's going to come up. It is a problem. That's right. It's right now we've been pretty much highlighting the issues that we have with the denominations, but we got a problem right in the church proper, big time, and we'll be hitting that as we go along here. Nevertheless, whereunto, remember now we're talking about the apostles. Nevertheless, whereunto we have already attained, let us walk by the same rule, let us mind the same things. Now I beseech you, brethren, by the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that ye all speak the same thing, and that there be no divisions among you, but that ye be perfectly joined together in the same mind and in the same judgment. Does that mean that we just get in a room and throw some ideas out that we can all agree with and go with it? No, we're not going to have unity. We're not called to have this unity if it's against the Word of God. Right? We're not concerned at all about having unity with the people that are not following God. We're going to constantly debate. We're going to love them, try to pull them into the fold, but we're not going to be worried about unity with them. We're going to be trying to teach them. See the difference? And that's what Paul's saying. He's saying, let's have unity among the body, first century Christians, those striving for it, Those striving for it, let's have unity with them, with that church. Paul said if it's possible for us to understand it is possible for us to understand if we read. So he's saying, look, you can have unity, you can do all these things if you'll just read